Okay. Hello, everybody. I think we're live. Just 1 second. All right. We are all here. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Let me see if I can see all of you. Just 1 second. I'm going to start right away with no delays. I know you guys are busy. All right. So can you see me all right? Can you hear me? I have the microphone on, so I think everything is working. Let me see. For some reason, this camera always works a bit different than the one I use. You know, the YouTube camera it reacts differently than the camera app, so I never know what you guys are seeing. But I think we're looking good. Let me just move this a little bit. Okay. Okay, everyone. So this is Andre Tonelli, as always. On Saturday, 6:30, we're here for the weekly live masterclass, where I talk about a certain topic that I picked during the week, sometimes because of your suggestions, sometimes because it's something I think is useful. And as always, we'll do a little bit of masterclass, maybe half of the video or a bit more, and then I'll open it up to questions. So you can use the chat to ask any question you want, and it can be related to the masterclass, to the previous masterclasses, or it can just be any kind of question, and I'll be happy to help if I can. First of all, I want to thank all of you because with this new format of masterclasses, I have to say that I have rekindled my enthusiasm for YouTube. As you know, the channel had been very active for a few years and then kind of went dormant for a while. And but now I think I found one way of doing this that is really inspiring to me, which is this format here live. I can hang out with you and I can know what's going on and I can understand the problems you might face and maybe even help out a little bit, because I think that's kind of why you're here. And so I want to thank you very much for that, and I think it will be an interesting ride. And also I want to thank all of you for your support. Last week there was a few donations, either here on the super chat or on my PayPal, and the link below, and I have to say that's really much appreciated, and it's actually already been well spent, and it's helped go towards some gear that I'm buying to make these masterclasses even better. So we're gonna have maybe something new in the camera department, maybe even in the audio department, but hey, we'll get there when we get there. But something's on the way, so you should see improvements very soon. Please let me know if you can hear me well, because sometimes this setup is a bit of a mystery. I'm kind of looking at my phone and I don't know what's going on. But so anyway, yeah, thank you very much for that. Of course, all these donations and all this stuff, absolutely 100% optional. You're very welcome to come here and get the most out of these lessons as you can, and that's plenty enough for me. You don't have to do anything. These classes will always be very relaxed in that way, and I won't stuff it down your throat either, which I kind of am. But anyway, one other thing that I wanted to talk about is I thought that maybe this series of masterclasses, we need a bit of a catchphrase to kind of get us together. And so I thought of one that might be very inspiring for me and for you, and is that you are your own best teacher. And this is something I keep in mind every time we do a masterclass. And the reason is that you can focus teaching and talking about music theory in many ways, but one that I don't like is just somebody just sitting there giving you a few tips, and then it's like, okay, well, that's it, and now you know it. And it's not true. That's a kind of a misconception. And I think it's misguiding people, maybe for a few views, I don't know. But to me, all I can do is really show you a few directions you can go to, and then the hard work is really on your part. So really, if you do find improvements thanks to these masterclasses, it's really more thanks to you than to me. And we'll get into that too at a later point, on how to schedule your practice and maybe how to do things in a more conducive way. But the most important thing is that the more you work on something, the more you actually find connections and a level of depth that will greatly improve your playing, and that's kind of separate from what I'm doing. I'm giving you the tools, and maybe I will give you a few tips on how to look at things, but really you will find your own way of organizing all your knowledge. And for that, if I may suggest something, is that you practice a lot, either one or two things for a lot of time, or many things for just a bit of time. But you have to prolongate that for like weeks or months. And eventually one day we'll all just click, and then you can move on to the next thing. All right, so today is kind of in that spirit. And today we'll talk about chords. The idea behind chords is that when you look at a book on chords, or if you listen to somebody talking about chords, there's so many kinds of chords, so many names for them, so many formulas. And of course, all these things are important, but I was hoping to do something that moves us away from memorizing. Because memorizing things in music and on the guitar, because the guitar is such a strange instrument architecturally, where you don't see all the relationships as well as, for example, on a piano, right? On a piano, you have your white keys and your black keys and your whole steps and your half steps. They're all there, right? Left to right. The guitar is a bit stranger, if you have noticed. And so memorization is really not the best way to go about doing things with the guitar, because as soon as you get to a certain point of memorization, you start losing the first things you memorized to the advantage of the newer things you memorized, and then slowly you get into the cycle of forgetting things. So it's very important as soon as you learn something new to apply it and to really go to the bottom of it and see if you can figure out the actual structure and the why and the how it works. So that's how we're going to focus today's lesson. And it starts from a very, very, very basic thing that you all know. And actually, this will be very easy for a lot of you, at least the beginning. So we're going to take just a couple of basic chord shapes, as simple as they get. The only thing, I'm not doing it in C. It will take us down here on the neck, and it's a bit low for then, for other things that I want to do. So we'll start on G, which is the next maybe easier key, right? We're going to do G major, but you can apply this to any major chord or minor chord, as we'll see. Also, I decided to limit the amount of stuff we're going to do around these two shapes that cover only the 4 middle strings. Okay, that's because, again, we have to go through this fairly quickly. We don't want to stay here 4 hours. And also, whatever you understand here, you're better off just finding yourself throughout the neck and throughout different sets of strings, instead of just relying on me to tell you, because you'll get a lot more out of it. Oh, by the way, hello everyone. Yeah, if I ignore the chat for a little while, just don't get offended. We'll get to the chat later. Of course, you can write whatever you want, and then but I might not be able to follow it because otherwise I'll forget what I'm saying. But welcome everyone. And so we're going to start with these two chords. If you don't know them, this is just a G major chord and another G major chord in a different fingerings. They have the same exact they have the same exact notes, and it's the following. We have G, D, G again, and B. So if you know your basic theory, is the root, the fifth, the root is doubled, and the third, the major third for a chord. Okay, there's a reason why I'm doubling the root, and we'll get to that. And then the same exact chord, we're going to take another fingering and do it kind of from the root downwards instead of from the root upwards. And it's like this. It's 10 is G, 9 is B, then it's D, and then it's G again, because we want two roots, and you'll see why in a little while. And these two positions have, as you can see, the same notes. Both of them double the root, but the arrangement of notes and the voices is a bit different. Here we have the root, the fifth, the root, and the third. And here we have root, third, fifth, root. And this will have some consequence later. Of course, you might wonder, well, how about other chords or other ways of doing these chords that I know? Well, that's perfect. You can use it, and whatever we teach today, you can do it. But these are very simple. We can all understand them. And then depending on your level, you can go out and do more. But one thing that you should know is that both of these positions are found on other sets of strings. And for example, this G is the same as this. And this G is the same as this, or here. So I won't get into all that, right? I trust that you can do it yourself, or ask about it, and we'll do it in a different masterclass. But today we're only going to focus on these two sets. But again, you can apply it to anything. All right. So here's the idea. As you know, chords come in these big books of chords where you have to learn thousands of chords, and it is true that it's very useful. There's a use for it, which is that when you're coming up with stuff very quickly, you do need a certain facility and agility in finding any chord you need. So I suggest that you do learn a few major chords, minor chords, diminished, a few seventh chords, and that's a topic for another thing. But today we want to get deep into the chords. And so let's study this chord here. We have G, again, D, G, and B. It's a major chord. Now, if we look at any book anywhere, and we find that the formula for the minor chord is the same as the major chord, but with the root, with the third, lower the half step. So this is my third, the B. If I just bring it down one half step, I have a minor chord, and you might be thinking, wow, you know, I'm here in this masterclass to learn this minor chord. Hang on there just for a second. So this is one of them. And then if I take this other voicing, I find the B and I can lower it and find another G minor. This is, for example, less common. A lot of people don't know this chord. But now I have my two majors, and just by lowering one note, which is the third, and I make it a minor third, I now find my two shapes of G minor. We're always in G. We're never going to leave G for the rest of the video, okay? Major, major. The 12 here goes to 11, minor. And the 9 here goes to 8, minor. Okay, very simple. And I know a lot of you know a lot of major and minor chords, but how many augmented and diminished chords do you know? You know, be honest, as you think about that, you maybe know 5 or 6 or 10 major chords, maybe 2 or 3 minor chords, or 4, and then maybe 1 diminished and no augmented. That's the situation with a lot of people. So we're going to remedy that in a very simple way. We look at the formula. For now, you have to trust me with this, but the formula for a diminished triad is the same as the minor chord, which we just found, but you have to lower the fifth. In the case of G, it's a D. So all I have to do is go to this chord, find the D, lower it a half step, and now I have this chord, 10, 11, 12, 11. You notice I picked this guitar because it has these big dots here, so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so this is my diminished chord, 10, 11, 12, 11. Now, towards the back, I had 10, 8, 7, 8. This was my minor chord to begin with. All I have to do again is find the fifth of the chord, which is a D, and it will always be a D if we're in G, and lower it a half step. And now I have this chord, a diminished triad. Now, with these three triads, major, minor, diminished, and with these other triads, major, minor, and diminished, I can already now harmonize any major, minor, or modal scale that I want. Of course, I'm talking about the regular modes based on the major chord or the major scale, so it's major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, or minor, and Locrian. Now I have chords and I have shapes for each one of these. As an example, very simple, we're going to play C major now, and I will only use this shape here, the first one. And now all I have to do is use whatever one of these fingerings fit the appropriate degree of the scale. In the case of the major scale is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and major. Okay, and we could do it with minor, of course. If I'm playing A minor or C minor, but let's do A minor, it's easier. I can do the same thing. Sorry, minor. I could do Dorian if I wanted to. I could do minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, you know, major and minor. I could do all the modes just with these triads. And depending on where I am on the neck, I could do it like on this side of the root or on that side of the root. It depends. Sometimes I have room to maneuver, sometimes I don't. And always keep in mind, as I said in the beginning, that you can take these to any other shape, so you can actually use the whole neck. So these three triads we did is major, minor, and diminished, and we always started from the very basic major position. There's one more triad that we should know, and a lot of people are not familiar with it because it doesn't come into play until we get into more complicated scales like melodic minor and harmonic minor. And that scale, that chord is the augmented triad, which is a major chord with a raised fifth. All it means is that we have G, B, D. D is the fifth, we have to raise it a half step, and it becomes D sharp. Very simple. So we have our basic form, we look for a D, and we raise it a half step. Okay? 10, 13, 12, 12. Cool? Then we can take the other shape, which we'll do throughout the video. Look for a D. Sorry. And now we have the augmented. It's a beautiful sound, very useful. Of course, you've heard it maybe before a fourth chord. Right? Maybe we have C and then we go C7th. We can go to the F augmented, to the C augmented, to the F. It's a beautiful sound used in many interesting scales. But with this new triad, now we can harmonize harmonic minors and melodic minors as well. So if one day you're starting to study your melodic minor modes, you will need the triads and the chords that go with that scale. Otherwise, you know, what do you do with the scale? Unless you already have a vamp somebody did for you and you have to play over it. But using it musically and composing with it is impossible unless you know your chords. So now with these 4 triads, we could harmonize the melodic minor scale. For example, we can go minor, minor, augmented. See that? That's the augmented scale. And then we go major, major, and to diminished. And we have our scale. Right, so with these 4 triads, you can do a lot more than what most people can do with chords, because they simply memorize them, but they don't have the basic knowledge to use them in a tonality. So this covers all the triads for basically every single scale you might want to use, because these work with every scale, major or minor, and all the modes of all the 3 major, the 3 most important families, which are minor, harmonic minor, and melodic minor. Okay. If you have any questions about this, now I will definitely read the chat, because I know it can be confusing, but I'll keep going now just for a little while, and then if I see any more questions, I'll go back to it and answer. Oh, hello, Jose and Kike. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. So we continue. Now, triads are just the very basic way of harmonizing scales, and there are more complex and more pleasing to the ear sound, which are the 7th chords, which are 4 notes in a chord. We have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. In the case of G, which we're playing now, the G is always the root. As we said before, B is always the 3rd, D is always the 5th, and in this case, F is always the 7th. Now, F can be F, it can be F sharp, it could be F flat, you know, but it's always an F, right? So we have these 4 notes. And now you see why I insisted on using shapes that had 2 roots, because it's a lot easier to find the 7th going down from the root than counting our way up 7 steps. We can just go down 1 step. Okay, so the first chord we're going to find is starting from the very first shape that I showed you, the major shape. Okay, and all we have to do to this major shape to transform it into the first 7th chord is just adding an F sharp, which is the note right before the root. And because I gave you shapes that have 2 roots, we can keep one as a root and just move the other one backwards just 1 step, and that will give us our major 7th chord. So 10, 12, 12, 12, that's our major chord. G, D, G, B. If I lower this G 1/2 step to F sharp, I have this G major 7th. If I do the same here, this double G here, I lower it a 1/2 step, and I have a major 7th chord. 1, 2. This will work, of course, in any key. So if I'm here, this will be a D major 7th, and this will be a C major 7th, and this will be an E major 7th. And I could even do it on different strings, but we're not going to do that today. So that takes care of the major 7th. Very important chord, and we'll look at that eventually, but you have to know it. There's another option when it comes to major chords, and that option is to, instead of using the major 7th, which is 1/2 step before the root, is to use the minor 7th, which is a whole step before the root. In the case of G, it's F. So again, we make it very simple. We take the G major shape, lower the 2nd root that I don't need it because I already have 2 of them, lower the 1/2 step, 10, 12, 10, 12. This is a G7th. Now on this shape, all I have to do is lower this note here. Now, if this stretch is too much for you, there are ways around it. We'll look at that today. But you should be able to stretch 5 frets. You know, it's kind of necessary to be able to do that. All right, so these are my 7th shapes. Now let's take the minor chord as the basis for chords. So this shape here and this shape here. If you're new to this, you'll have to watch this masterclass a few times just to write things down. But we'll go with the minor shape, 10, 12, 12, 11. And again, the rule for the minor 7th chord is to take the minor chord and add a 7th, a minor 7th, which is, as we just said, the note, there's a whole step before the root. So in this case, F again, 10, 12, 10, 11. And then we'll go from here to here. It's a very beautiful voicing. You don't see it very often, but it's very nice voicing. Okay? So this is G minor 7th, G minor 7th. Now I have major 7th, minor 7th, and the dominant 7th. And this is enough to harmonize, which means to put chords to every mode of the major scale. So major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, and that's it, 7 notes. And all the pentatonics, of course, they come from it. So I could take Did we do the diminished? Did we do the diminished 7th? Oh, we haven't done the diminished 7th. Okay, just 1 second. We're missing one of them. We're missing one of them because when we do 4-note chords, which is the 7th chords, we still need one more chord. I'm sorry about that. The last chord, which was diminished, now becomes a half diminished chord, which is a minor chord with a minor 7th. Again, a diminished chord with a minor 7th. So we go to the diminished chord, 10, 11, 12, 11. Lower the 12 a whole step to 10, and we have, this is the minor 7th flat 5 chord, or half diminished. It's called both ways. And this is the 7th chord of a major scale when it's harmonized in 7th, in 7th. So it can be played like this, or we can take this diminished chord that we had here, remember? This one, sorry. We can lower the root and play 10, 8, 6, 6. This is also a beautiful chord that you can use even just for vamping over Locrian modes. Beautiful chord. So now we can take these shapes and harmonize. And then I use this chord and then this. And of course, this can be used with any mode. If I want to play the Lydian mode of C, then I just have to modify the order in which I use this progression. Okay, so we've done major 7th, minor 7th, dominant 7th, and half diminished, or minor 7th flat 5. Okay? Are you guys following along? Is this too much? Because we still have quite a ways to go. Can you use this in one example? Okay, yes. Well, that's kind of what I was trying to do here with the C, of course. So if I want to, let's say I want to play a chord progression in C major, and I want to write a song, and I want to use 7th chords, because I notice how I like the sound of the 7th chords instead of just regular triads. So the 7th does add it's a beautiful sound. So just with these 2 fingerings, I have 2 ways of doing it. So if I want to play a progression and I want to play C major 7th, E minor 7th, maybe A minor 7th, which is a common chord, and then maybe I go to G 7th, which brings me back to 1, to C. You see that? I can do all of this, and it's all based on these 2 shapes that we began the video with. And there's so much more you can do with this. But for example, let's say that instead of a major progression, you're like, no, I'm studying the modes, so I'm going to go with something that's Lydian, like we said before. So Lydian, the order is major 7th, 7th or dominant, minor 7th, diminished, major 7th, minor 7th, minor 7th, and we're back to 1. I can do all this with these shapes. Of course, I can also do it with these other shapes that we looked at. And the 7th, you know, it's all here. And you can do this with every chord you want. And you can do it with every progression, you can do it in every key. But the most important thing is that all these chords, when you find them the way we're doing now, you do it a few days and you'll never forget them, because you're not memorizing position, you're not memorizing chords, you're not memorizing from a page. You're actually taking simple shapes and you're understanding how and why each chord is built the way it is. So I know it sounds complicated, and I know it's easy to get lost, and it will be easier later when we get into strange chords. But if you keep watching this, or at least write it down and go over it, eventually you can relate everything you do on the guitar. Doesn't matter how strange it sounds, and it doesn't matter how out there the name of the chord is, you can always bring it back to something that you know. Okay, and then you just modify that. And I'll give you an example of this later. But you know, so far, just with these two shapes, we found how to harmonize every mode, every melodic minor mode, every harmonic minor mode, in triads and in sevenths. Okay? Great and easy explanation, just practicing it while watching. That's the way to go. And Lydian has its own flavor. Yeah. Well, all these modes have a flavor, right? We talked about it last week. And because they have this flavor, you lose that flavor if you don't understand what chords are in what function for each of these modes. And so you need to be able to move around these chords quickly. And that's what this does. Right? So let's keep going. And so for now we have major, minor, diminished, augmented, triads, and then we did all the sevenths, major 7th, dominant 7th, minor 7th, and minor 7th flat 5, which allow us to harmonize every major or minor scale. To do the other two scales, the melodic minor and the harmonic minor, we do need a few other chords. Two of them are a bit strange, and one of them is very useful. So let's do the strange ones first, and you see how no matter how strange and hard the name of the chord sounds, it's actually very easy to do. So the next chord is called the minor major 7th chord. Strange, you see it written as C, M, and in parentheses major 7th. You'll be like, what is that? It's just as the name says, it's a minor chord, which we have since the very beginning of this video, with a major 7th. And the major 7th, we already used it to make the major 7th chord, and it was lowering the root 1/2 step. So all I have to do is go to this root here, lower it a 1/2 step, and I have this chord. And this chord is the one chord of both the melodic minor and the harmonic minor. So if I'm playing this chord over it, I can use this. I can use this. See that? Isn't it cool? And some people, and I know you guys know a lot, well, some of you know more than others, but some people who don't know about chords and they spend so much time memorizing chords, they usually stop when they get to the diminished, right? They don't go through a whole chord book memorizing, and they might never get to this. But then they feel like they have to know some exotic scales, so they study the melodic minor, and then they have no idea what to use chord-wise with it. So it's extremely important that you use it. Okay? So this is an example. So the minor with a major 7th. So right now we have a major chord with a major 7th, a major chord with a minor 7th, a minor chord with a minor 7th, a minor chord with a major 7th, and then we have a diminished chord with a minor 7th. Okay? There's another chord that comes from the augmented triad, which is strange sounding, and it works with the melodic and the harmonic minor scales. And it's an augmented chord with the major 7th. Now this is a strange chord. And there are some modes that work with this chord. Sorry, sorry, I gave you the wrong chord. I mean the wrong scale. The scale here would be this. You go right? It's very exotic sounding. So you might find this not that important, but you see how easy it is to find. If the rule says that you need an augmented fifth and a major seventh, you can start from the very first shape we found in the video, raise the fifth, lower the root, and that's your chord. If one day you want to learn the augmented major mode of the harmonic minor scale, go ahead. This is the chord. And you can find what chord it is anywhere, but you won't find fingerings for it, and you won't remember them until you exactly understand of why it's an augmented chord and how do I find it on the neck. And you'll always have this reference of your starting point, and you go like, wow, I do remember how to play an augmented. Let me just add the major seventh. Or maybe I remember how to play a major seventh chord. Let me just add this raised fifth. You see what I mean? Now, if we take it backwards, we had this augmented chord, 10, 9, 8, 8. Right? See, it's already a beautiful chord. But if I want to make the major seventh version, in G, the major seventh is F sharp. Lower it a half step, and look at this chord. And this is the chord, and you can use it anywhere. All right? So as I warned you that this was going to get pretty intense pretty quickly, and I know a lot of people might have thought in the beginning that, wow, this is an easy video, and there's a bit more coming. Now, if we continue harmonizing the melodic and harmonic minor scales with the seventh chords, we'll also find one more chord, which is the diminished seventh chord. And the diminished seventh chord is a chord that is diminished, so the diminished triad, which is easy because we had it in the beginning. But it has a diminished seventh, which is 1.5 steps before the root. So my doubled root is on the 12th fret of the third string, and I have to lower it 3 frets. 1, 2, 3. And this is the chord. See that? And this chord is extremely useful, like 100% needed. You need to know this chord. I won't tell you why today, but it's an extremely useful chord. Besides, you need it to harmonize the melodic minor scale and the harmonic. And that's it. Oh, yeah, one thing. Sometimes when you start modifying chords pretty intensely, you might run out of fingers or frets. Because, for example, this shape here, the diminished one, would be already like this, and then I have to play like this. Worse, I have to play like this. Right? Which is not too easy. And then if I have to play down here. So sometimes you can do things, and I will give you a few tricks. Sometimes you can just go, okay, wait, why am I moving this root? Because I have 2 of them. I don't have to leave the root on the lower strings. I can just lower this one and use the rest of the chord. It will change the shape a little bit, but you will find that it's a lot easier to do this than to do this, all right? But the fact remains that you're finding your own chords and you're making them up from something that you 100% understand, which are the basic major minor shapes. And so don't be afraid of finding solutions to impossible fingerings, okay? That's inevitable. Eventually, we'll do like so many shapes today and only a couple give you a hard time to play them. Okay, so I'm going to go over it really quick again because I know it can get confusing. Starting from the major, shape of G major and G major, we have modified before at the beginning just enough to get our basic triads, which were major, minor, diminished, and augmented. And they were all here. Then we decided to add one more note to get to the next big family of chords, which are the 7th chords. And we did major 7th, 7th, let me play them. Major 7th, dominant 7th, minor 7th, minor 7th flat 5 or half diminished. And then we said, well, okay, that's fine, but we want to get further than that. We want to find every possible combination. So we did minor major 7th, augmented major 7th, and diminished 7th. Okay, and this will get you through any scale basically that you can ever think of. It will get you through all the natural minor modes. It will get you through the melodic minor and the harmonic minor. So I know this can get confusing. I'm open to questions. Please feel free to interrupt because I can understand that, if I'm doing this person to person, I can see the guy's face and I can say, okay, time to slow down, but please let me know if you're confused. But these chords that we did up until right now are structural chords. They're chords that are really truly part of harmonizing a scale. So if you want to know scales, you have to learn your scales, but you need to know how to play chords under them. And the triads and the seventh chords are really impossible to ignore. They're structural chords and you need to know them because they carry not only a sound but a specific function, like the dominant function. It's extremely important. It's part of the fabric of music, of the music. If we get away from these structural chords and we go more on the decorative or decorative, I don't know how you say it, but you know, the beautiful chords, then we can find just chords that have a different sound. And here's how it works. The first ones are very, very easy. They're again made up of only 3 notes, and they're called the suspended chords. There's a sus2 chord and there's a sus4 chord. Extremely easy. I'm already beginning from the same shape as before, G major. Extremely simple and very, very easy to find. Everybody knows it. And it's a G, D, G, B. Now, the suspended 2 chord says that it's the same as a major chord, but the third is lowered a whole step, down to the second. So G, A, B. I take out the B and I use the A, and it's as simple as this. I just look for the B, lower it 2 steps, and I go. So now I'm playing 10, 12, 12, 10. I lowered this B on the 12th fret down to the A on the 10th. It's a beautiful chord. It's not major nor minor. You don't know what it is because it doesn't have that information. If I go on this side, G major, here's my B. I just lower it a whole step, and I get this shape. Right? It's a beautiful chord. The suspended 4th chord, same thing. It says, okay, don't play the 3rd. Play the note that's 1/2 step above it. So I go to the B, which is my 3rd, raise it a 1/2 step. This is the sound. I can go here, look for my B, sorry, this one, and lower it a 1/2 step. You see, it's not major, it's not minor, it's just this airy chord that can resolve to major, but it could also go to minor. And they're very useful chords, especially when you don't want to give it all away at the beginning of the song. Like you're like, well, I don't want this guy to know exactly if I'm happy or not, or if there's something going on. And so I can use this chord. Other beautiful chords that add sound to a chord are the Add9 chords. Again, extremely simple formula. You take a major chord or a minor chord, it's the same thing, and we add the second, which is again the A. Now, I'm not going to move the note here, the finger that's on the 3rd, B, because I need that to make the chord major or minor. But thankfully, I picked the right chord at the beginning of the video, and I have an extra root here, so I can raise that 2 steps, 2 frets, which is a whole step. This is a major chord with an added 9. And this is a minor chord with an added 9. Beautiful chord. Now if I go on this side, this is my extra root that I don't need. I can raise it from 8 to 10, change my fingers. Major at 9, lower this note, minor at 9. Extremely simple. And this brings us to another concept that I introduced a bit briefly earlier, which is that if I have 2 roots, I don't have to do this. Some people have a hard time opening their fingers so much, especially if you're playing it down here. They might have a hard time doing it, but you have 2 roots. So why don't we just raise this and we do 12, 12, 12, 12. Okay, we can do it. It's still an Add9 chord, right? Now here it doesn't make that much sense, but I could just raise this one. Of course, it doesn't make as much sense. It's easier to just do this. Sorry, here. But you know, whenever you need to, feel free to move things around. If I want to find a major 7th chord by lowering the root, I can lower this one, but I can also lower this one. I can even combine it major 7. Right? If I do it in the high note, it sounds, this is going to be hard to do. This is the effect on the higher note. It's the same chord. Okay, so again, doing it will make you able to control the chords and control the harmony and the theory. Watching me do it, it might help you quite a little bit, and it might confuse you a little bit, but it won't get it into your head and fingers. So the only way you can do this is really explore it yourself. But you can always refer back to this video, and it will make more sense as you keep doing it. Okay, so one more chord that is extremely useful, and it's ornamental again, it's not structural. It doesn't change the function of a chord. It doesn't really push it towards, you know, resolution like the 7ths do. It's a more stable chord, but is ornamental. You know, it gives you a different sound to the basic chord. It's a 6th chord. 6 chords, again, extremely simple. You can take a major chord and add the 6th. The 6th is the note that is a whole step above the 5th. And now we have a little thing we can talk about. We could, of course, work our way down from the root 3 steps, or 3 half steps, better said, 3 frets on the guitar, and that's our 6th. So this is major, 10, 12, 12, 12. This extra 12 that I don't need, I can bring it down to 9, which is E, and it will sound like this beautiful chord. This is called a G6 chord. You don't need, the name is very simple, it's just you add a 6, so G6. Sometimes the fingering might be a bit difficult, not in this case, but we'll find one very soon. In that case, we could just raise the 5th. And you will say, well, but now I lose the 5th because we have 2 roots, 1/3 and 1/5. And that is fine. That is one of the biggest, the most important rules on chords, is that you can lose the 5th. The 5th doesn't really have a function, it's very consonant, it doesn't really add much, and it can be lost. So feel free whenever you want to drop the 6th, okay? But in this case, I can afford to keep it because I have my root, my 5th, my 6th, and my 3rd. So it's a major chord with a major 6th. If you go back this way, I have my 2 roots here. If I lower this one 3 steps from 8 to 5, it's possible, but I can understand if some people have trouble with this. So what do we do? Well, what we said before, I have 2 roots. Let's leave this alone, move this down 3 frets, and now the root is this, and I'm in G6. If you notice that it's the same as another chord, I won't get into it today, but we will talk about it eventually. Okay, so feel free to move the one you want. Now, there's also another option. This is the 5th root, 3rd, 5th root. I said I can drop the 5th. I don't need the 5th. So I could move this 5th up 2 frets, which is the same thing as lowering the octave 3 frets. And I go to the same note, which is E. This is a very common fingering for a 6th chord. Easy to do. And it sounds beautiful. It just doesn't have a 5th. It has 2 roots, 1/3, and the 5th. Okay, so let's do this again. From a major chord, I can add a note that's 3 steps below the root. So from major, I can add the E. In the case of G, we're in G, so I can add an E. And I can add an E. And if it sounds a bit, if the fingering is a bit hard, I can drop the 5th and replace it with the 6th. Okay? Same with minor. Very simple chord. This is called a minor 6 chord. Extremely important because it's the chord of the Dorian mode, and in jazz, for example, every minor chord is considered Dorian, so it's extremely important chord. We start with the minor chord and add the 6th. Now, if we are in minor here, this might be difficult for some people. Sorry, for me too. Look, there you go. It's a beautiful chord, but I can drop the fifth or I can lower the octave. I don't mind. I can do anything I want, and I would always find a sixth chord. And finally, there's another chord that's for people who use regular scales and not modes. If you just want to play a minor scale, you cannot use this chord, which is the minor sixth chord. You need a minor flat sixth chord. And that's done by simply taking the same thing we did before and lowering it. So instead of E, we lower the half step, E flat. Now this becomes impossible 100%. There you go. It's kind of like an X-file thing. And so I will have to find another option, which is very easy. I can take this fifth that I don't need and just lower it or raise it a half step, you know, whatever I want to do, and find my B flat, my minor flat six. Okay, so these are, I think, there are 15 chords that all come from a very basic shape of G major. And I can understand if it's confusing, but, and you know, I don't want to put it on you, but to do things, you know, that I of course I'm showing them to you, but really you need to go back to this and do it like 2 or 3 times. And everything will be extremely clear, because what I'm showing you that might sound confusing is so dumb. It's really easy. It's extremely easy. And I can tell people are confused because the chat is dead. And also I can see the number going up and then down and then up. And some people might find this confusing and they're kind of giving up. Don't give up. Do it. And you can do it with any chord you want. Any chord you want. So before we close, I'm going to do just one more thing, just to give you a little tip. If you go, we did the second, which are the ninth, we did the sixth, we modified the third, and we did the seventh. These notes are all pretty close to the root, either downwards or upwards. If you modify the fourth and the fifth, then it can be a bit stretchy, and then you have to kind of learn the theory that, for example, says that you can drop the fifth of a chord, sometimes you can drop the third, and that's beyond what we're doing today. And just one more thing to keep you thinking about this is that all I did today, which made it quite hard for me to prepare this video because I'm tired, but I haven't added any string. So we did all this, 15 families of chords with 4 strings, and always starting from this very simple shape. There are many other shapes that give me easier access to these chords. So don't get discouraged if one of them is too hard to finger. They're everywhere. And the other thing is that if I decide to add one string to the game, imagine the kind of chords you can find, right? You could add anything. Raise fourths, you can add, you know, again, the sixth, just add them an octave higher, an octave lower. You can do all kinds of stuff. But for now, I think it would be a very useful exercise. And I know that when I prepared this video, I thought they're going to crucify me for this because, you know, it starts so easy and some people will fall asleep and then it gets confusing. But if I can again insist that you watch it a few times, write it down, and you will thank me next week, I think. All right, so that's it for the masterclass. I hope it wasn't too bad. And feel free to comment, please, now in the chat. I'll hang around for a little while and I'll answer any questions. And you know, we have a few minutes at least that I can, if I can help you with any questions, I will. So there's a bit of a delay until I see it on the screen, but I'll hang around. Let me see, I have some notes here that I think I covered everything. So I'll wait for your questions, and of course, if you need anything repeated, I'm happy to, and they can be on this or not. But I'll just tell you while I wait that doing this and kind of making up this method of working gave me a great advantage, because not only did I learn chords, but what it did to me was made everything else that I study so much easier, because I can apply this, and you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to scales, understanding what you modify from one scale to the next. You know how many people I know who go crazy with the modes because they memorize them. They don't understand the structure. And it's such a simple thing. It's like if you learn maths with just like 5 numbers, you know, it's extremely simple. It's a very simple thing, and hopefully I kind of give you an inkling today, and we can go deep with this. This can get very deep, but I don't want to scare you off. So Let me read some of the comments while I wait for your questions. Great and easy explanation, just practicing. Well, oh yeah, that's true. I read that. Thanks. It's a beautiful chord. Holsworth chord. Yeah, that flat 6. Amazing explanation, hands down. Well, thank you very much. And I need to understand the chords of the modes to make sense of them. Okay, that's a good question. Well, Jose, that's a good question. Remember last week we talked about. By the way, did you guys see the clips? I've made two short videos out of the masterclass from last week, and I think it's a good idea to do that. If you guys enjoy it, let me know, because I think sometimes watching a whole thing again. So, but in the short video that I made, the clip, I talk about how it's important to, and I think it was your question, it's important to take a mode for what it is and not to always bring it back down to the major parent, right? And the same with the chords. If you have a major scale, I'm gonna do it with the triads, okay? Because it's easier. Or I do it with the 7th chords, so you can practice them. I only use this fingering. So if you study the major scale harmonized in 7th chords, so chords with 4 notes, it's major 7th, minor 7th, minor 7th, major 7th, 7th, minor 7th, minor 7th flat 5 or half diminished, and the 1 again, which is the C major 7. Now you can start counting on any of these steps, and it will correspond to the 1 chord of that mode. So if the Dorian mode is the 2nd mode of major, the formula for the Dorian mode would be the same as the major one, but starting on the 2nd one. So it would be minor 7th, minor 7th, major 7th, 7th or dominant, minor 7th, half diminished, and then major 7th, sorry, and then the final one, minor 7th. Now this is the harmony that the mode requires. The mode requires this harmony. If you want to play Dorian, these are the chords of Dorian, and it's important to see them as the 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 5, 6 of Dorian, and not of major chords starting on the 2nd one, or on the 5th one if you're playing Mixolydian, or on the 7th one if you're playing Locrian. You need to know your series. And this can be memorized. I mean, these are very simple things. They're 7 numbers. You know, what you can't memorize is all this that I play today. And if you memorize it, you won't have access to it, because memory is such a flimsy thing in music. You know, you can't quite memorize everything. It's more like math. You understand it, you don't memorize it. Or language. You know, language maybe is a better example. And so that's how I look at it, and it's very useful. So true, most of the times I just create new chords and progressions by ear due to my lack of theory understanding. Okay, well, the ear is great, you know, but sometimes it's not enough. Yes, I watched the clips. Those capsules are required. Okay, well, I'll keep making them then. Great. Good results sometimes. You mean playing by ear, but it is tedious and limiting without good chord knowledge. Yeah. The other thing with chords, that if you play them by ear, you might be missing out, because your ear tends to know what it knows. So unless somebody teaches you, for example, a certain scale, or you heard it somewhere, you won't be able to really utilize it, you know, because your ear just doesn't go there. And that's a very simple experiment you can make. You can do this experiment. Just play a simple chord progression and tell like 5 people to sing a song to make up a melody over them, and they're all kind of the same. They follow the chord, they do that, and usually they follow the rhythm as well. So you change the rhythm and they all sing the same thing. And so to get out of that, it's important to train your ear to do that, because once you hear it and you know it's there, then it's a lot easier. And that's why I always say that eventually you want to know, and we'll get into it, you want to know everything. You want to know scales, for example, and chords. You do want to know all of them well, properly, but there are priorities, right? So I think, for example, if you learn all your major scales and maybe just a few and the modes and a few modes of the harmonic and melodic, you can get away with a lot, you know. And maybe the obscure modes of the harmonic minor, then we can keep them for later, or maybe know them at a different level, you know. But this thing is necessary. You know, this thing is not like some kind of, oh, look at me, I know all these chords. This is actually necessary. And if it always falls back, you know, it falls into the background as compared to scales. So many students, they know their scales, kind of, you know, they memorize them, and they have no idea about chords. So you have to answer, you know, you have to question that and ask them, well, why did they teach you all these scales and you have no idea what chords go with the scales? You know, what's the situation? What's the the actual, what are you trying to do? Is the only situation you'll ever be in, you being somewhere, put in front of a chord progression, like somebody's playing for you, or you're always playing to a YouTube backing track? What are you doing, right? If you want to make music, you need to understand the chordal structure and then the scales that go over it. Good results sometimes? Okay, good. Seems like one lifetime isn't enough to learn music. No, no, it's not enough. And yeah, but again, we did talk about it often, that it's never enough for anyone. You know, we all have our things that we need to work on. As a matter of fact, you know, I learn things or practice things every day, every night. At least 1 hour or 2 is dedicated only to learning new things or organizing new things, because it's never enough. You know, it's never enough. You get somewhere and you go like, wow, I wish I knew that as well as I know this. You know, or I wish I could organize this a bit better. Andre, what could be a good advice to study mode by mode? I like Mixolydian, but how to study songs with it? Oh, well, actually, what I wanted to do was make a few master classes, maybe 7 of them, which would be quite a lot, or maybe just 2 of them, divided them in major modes and minor modes, and get into detail about the modes. But for now, I would suggest that you find any way you can that you can trust to play the mode. Right, so just find the formula. So if you're in C, that's Lydian, sorry. If you're in C major, and then find out how to play the Mixolydian. Right, you can just read it. You don't have to learn it, just read it somewhere. And then also find a list of chords that go with Mixolydian. So if we're in C, these will be the chords, and you can just actually read them on a piece of paper. I don't mind. And play over this a long time. Play over it for a week. You know, if you can expand. If you can expand your scales, it's better than just being stuck on an octave. But you know, whatever you do, just play with it. Play with it, because your ear will tend to bring it back down to C, right? If you play, if you play C Mixolydian, it will bring it down to F, which is the parent major scale. It's the same thing as if you play G Mixolydian, your ear will tend to make you fall back into C major, which is its parent scale. So it's important that you really spend time with the mode. It works with every mode. And I'll give you tips eventually. We'll do a masterclass on the modes. But until then, find something you're comfortable with. It can be 1 octave, it can be 2 octaves, it can be 1 whole position. I don't know how much you know. But as soon as you have that, find a list of chords that work with that mode. In the case of Mixolydian, you know, it's a major, minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major. Or you can do the 7th version, which I played. And play over it. And you play over it, and you play over it. And try to focus on the sound of each of these notes over home, which in this case is C Mixolydian. If you want to make it very simple, use G Mixolydian, which is C major, and use the chords of C major, but the first chord will always be G major. And that's the best thing you can do, but spend time with each mode. And eventually you get that sound into your ear, and you'll be able to predict how it sounds. And you will also be able to compare it to other modes. Like for me, the modes have this very distinctive quality to them. And the other thing is that when you understand the modes, you'll be able to play them and use them, and they will sound better than when you don't know about them. You know, some people learn the modes and like, well, they sound like shit. And they sound bad because they don't know how to navigate them. They don't know how to correct. They don't know how to manage all these new sounds. They don't know where they go. Where should I go with this note? You know, and that's a problem. Thank you. I need guidance and validation. Well, validation will only come from your own ear, I am afraid. But guidance I can provide. You know, guidance is something that I can do. But validation, you'll know when things click. All right. So I hope this wasn't too scary. You know, today's video. And as I said before, I'm committed to this format. I know I'm going to repeat it because now there's more of you here. I'm totally committed to this new format. Every Saturday at 6:30 I'll be here. And as I said, we're working on improving a bit of you know, the gear here, so you'll see things sound better and they will look better. And I'm open to suggestions for future masterclasses, though I'm preparing a few and I think they will be useful. And some of them will be a bit like way out there. You know, you might not be ready for them, but eventually I think when we get to number 10 or number 20 or number 30, as a whole, it will all make sense, I think. And I can predict where you guys are at with your level, especially now that there's more and more people watching. I have no idea of where you're at, so I can't really tailor it to specifically to anyone. But I think eventually, if this is too much for you today, just watch it a few times and let it sit. Eventually, it will all make sense. One about your amps. I know, Indrajit, you want... Yeah, go ahead. Ask about the amps, and I will make a video on the amps, I promise. But I'm happy to answer. Big part of YouTube music classes stay stuck at beginners. Yeah, I think so. You know, I'm afraid I'm a very bad YouTuber because I don't watch music videos on YouTube. But you know, I'm trying to do what I think is good for you eventually. It might not be good for you today, but it will be useful eventually. It's information that's been very useful to me. Okay, Indrajit, I will answer your question about amps as soon as I see it on the screen. The best is to watch this again and again, replay as much as you need, taking your time. That's true. That's what I would do. You go beyond beginners, which is what many of us want. Well, it's good to hear. And yeah, I am actually, you know, I really wasn't into this before, but I'm 100% committed to this. So I do want more people to find this channel because I think we can make a difference for a lot of people. And so I'm working on it. We'll make this channel a bit bigger and we'll have more people and more questions. No question. I was hoping you make a video about it. Yes, I will. I will try to make one next week, and maybe a live video on a Thursday maybe, just to separate a bit from these master classes. But I don't want to give this up because I think this will be extremely useful for a lot of people. But thanks for your interest, and I will definitely make a video, maybe live, or maybe I'll just film it and then put it up. But I prefer to do it live, so maybe this Thursday. If it sounds good to you and I'm here, I'll make a video this Thursday, maybe 6:30. I'll do it live, and then eventually you can watch it, or you can just, of course, I prefer if you're here. And I promise I'll make one either this week or the next. You'll get a video on my amps. Okay? So it's already 1 hour. I see there's a few likes on the video, so maybe I was worried about nothing because I thought maybe you guys would hate me for this video, but I'm glad to hear that and to see that you enjoyed it. And if there's no more questions, maybe we should just leave it here. I'll see you next week, same time, 6:30 on Saturday. Bring your friends. You know, please do spread the word. And I thought I would never say this, but please do subscribe to the videos, to the channel, and so we can make this as big as possible and get to more people. I think there's so many people that need some kind of guidance with this. And again, thank you all for your support. You've been great. There's a few of you here who have actually supported the channel. And you'll see the fruits of your labor very soon. Hopefully next week there will be some kind of improvement. And again, thanks very much. I'll see you very soon. Let me see if I can turn this off without making you all puke. I'll be quick. Bye.